Flight attendant demands that the prince leave first class, but she doesn't know it's his plane. Main characters: Kate Henderson, flight attendant James, devoted husband Sam Richardson, co-pilot Prince Thomas. Plane owner Kate Henderson woke up at 4:30 a.m. to the buzzing of her phone's alarm. She was not a morning person, but over the years, she had learned to handle these early wake-up calls with as much grace as possible. A strong cup of coffee, a quick shower, and she'd be ready to put on her crisp flight attendant uniform. This was a big day for her. She was scheduled to work on a private jet flight taking off from a small executive terminal in New York. Normally, a private flight meant a more relaxed crowd. Maybe a few wealthy business people, sometimes celebrities, and occasionally high-profile politicians. It was rarely more than a handful of passengers, so the job was quieter, if somewhat more intimate in terms of service expectations. She kissed her husband, James, goodbye as he groggily woke up to see her off. James worked as a middle school teacher and wouldn't need to be at school for another few hours. "Stay safe, honey," he muttered, pulling her in for a quick hug. "You never know what characters you'll meet in the skies." Kate laughed. "Don't worry about me. I'm always on my guard." By 5:15 a.m., she was in a rideshare on her way to the private hangar, going through her mental checklist. Ensure safety protocols, check catering setup, confirm passenger manifest, maintain a confident yet friendly demeanor. Everything seemed routine. When she finally arrived, she was greeted by the co-pilot, Sam Richardson, an old friend and someone she trusted implicitly. They exchanged pleasantries and discussed what they anticipated to be a calm flight to Los Angeles. An hour before takeoff, Kate began her usual preparation. She carefully inspected the cabin's plush leather seats, took stock of the well-appointed galley, and made certain that every champagne flute, dinner plate, and napkin was perfectly arranged. The private aircraft they were working on was rumored to be owned by an extremely wealthy foreign investor. She had never met him personally, so there was still a degree of mystery about who would be traveling. Around 6:30 a.m., catering services arrived, offering an array of gourmet dishes, fresh seafood, filet mignon, seasonal salads, and a lavish dessert spread. Kate double-checked everything, ensuring the temperature of the dishes was precise and that the wines were chilled to the correct degrees. Then the passengers started arriving. First came a few well-dressed men who looked like security personnel, broad-shouldered, wearing dark suits with discreet earpieces. They nodded politely at Kate, but said little. One of them, with a baritone voice, informed her that the principal passenger would board last. Eventually, a tall man in an impeccably tailored suit walked in. He had an air of confidence about him, though he was unsteady on his feet. Kate initially thought he might be overtired or jet-lagged, but one whiff of the smell of alcohol, and she realized he might be more than a little tipsy. "Ma'am," he slurred slightly, "where can I find my seat?" She directed him to the spacious first-class area. Although this was a private jet, it was styled much like a compact version of a commercial airliner's first class, with only a handful of seats that fully reclined into beds. "Right this way, sir," she said politely. He wobbled his way down the aisle and collapsed into one of the leather seats, nearly spilling the small drink he'd brought on board from the airport lounge. Kate couldn't ignore the strong stench of liquor that hung around him. She hoped the flight would be peaceful, but she was already on edge. Drunk passengers could be unpredictable, and she wanted to ensure safety above all else. As the plane's door closed and they prepared for takeoff, Kate ran through all the pre-flight announcements and checks. The intoxicated man sat quietly enough, although he asked for another whiskey during taxi, which she tactfully declined until they reached cruising altitude. She shot the co-pilot a look, silently communicating that they should keep an eye on this passenger. What Kate didn't realize, and what would soon turn this routine flight into anything but ordinary, was that the seemingly rowdy passenger in seat 1A was not just another wealthy traveler. He was a prince, and not just any prince, but the actual owner of the aircraft they were on. Shortly after the jet reached cruising altitude, the intoxicated passenger pressed the call button. Kate approached him calmly, noticing the slight unsteadiness in his gaze. "Ma'am," he said, slurring a bit, "I'd like another whiskey. Make it a double." She offered him her practiced, professional smile. "Sir, let's get you some water first. We want you to stay hydrated." He frowned in annoyance. "Do I look like I need water? I can pay for whatever I want. Don't you know who I am?" Kate had heard this line 1,000 times from countless self-important travelers, but something in his demeanor suggested he actually believed it beyond the usual bravado. "I'm sorry, sir," she said in her most diplomatic tone, "but it's my responsibility to look out for the safety and well-being of all passengers. I need you to sober up if we're going to have a smooth flight." He leaned forward, eyebrows knitted. "I don't appreciate being lectured. My staff would never speak to me like that." "Sir, if you continue to cause a disturbance, I'm going to have to ask you to leave first class. There are other seats in the back, or if necessary, the flight might be diverted." The moment she said it, Kate noticed that the security guards who had boarded earlier were suddenly paying closer attention. They exchanged glances, and one of them stood up, ready to intervene. The passenger scoffed. "Leave first class? Oh, that's rich. Do you even realize whose plane you're on?" She looked around. All eyes were on her. "Look," she said more softly, "I'm just following protocol. If you calm down and show me you can handle your alcohol, we can avoid any issues, but I have the right to ensure a safe environment." At that, one of the security personnel cleared his throat. He approached Kate and whispered, "Ma'am, maybe we should let the prince be for the time being." Kate's eyes went wide. "Prince," she repeated in a hushed voice. The guard nodded. "Prince Thomas. This is his private jet. Didn't they tell you?" She felt a jolt of panic. "No, I was only given the name of the passenger manifest. No one mentioned royalty." The guard gave a subtle shrug, as if to say it was a common oversight. "He's from a small monarchy. Not many Americans would immediately recognize him. But yes, he is Prince Thomas, and this plane belongs to his family's private fleet." Kate's face grew hot. She had just tried to kick out the plane's owner from his own seat. She swallowed hard, bracing herself, then turned back to the prince. He was glaring at her with a mixture of amusement and indignation. She mustered her most professional tone. "Your Highness." "Don't try to charm me now," the prince interrupted, his voice tense. "You were ready to toss me out of first class just a moment ago. That's not exactly how you treat a prince, or a paying passenger." "I sincerely apologize for the misunderstanding," she said. "Had I known—" He raised a hand. "It doesn't matter what you knew or didn't know. You see me as just another drunk you can boss around." Kate's pride stirred. She bit back a retort, reminding herself that insulting a prince on his own aircraft would be the fastest way to lose her job. "I was only concerned for your safety, Your Highness. If you still want that whiskey, I'll get it for you." "No," he snapped. Then his expression softened slightly. "I've lost the taste for it at the moment." An awkward silence lingered between them. The security guards watched the exchange, unsure if they should intervene further. Prince Thomas leaned back in his seat, crossing his arms. "You have no idea who you're dealing with, Miss Flight Attendant," he said at last, though his tone was more subdued. Kate hesitated. "I do now, sir." He waved a dismissive hand. "Just go about your business, then. If you need me, you know where to find me." She gave a slight nod and excused herself to the galley, her mind racing. She felt embarrassed and exposed, but she also had a lingering sense that she had done her job correctly by prioritizing safety. Still, how was she going to handle the rest of this flight with a prince who had already seen her as an adversary? Hours passed, and the tension in the cabin was palpable. Kate served the other passengers with a grace that masked her inner turmoil. She felt the prince's eyes on her now and then, watching her every move with a critical gaze. Whenever she approached him to see if he needed anything, he would respond curtly or pretend to ignore her. Still, he drank less as the flight went on, and for that, she was grateful. By the time the plane was halfway across the country, the prince seemed more sober, though still irritated by the earlier confrontation. Kate approached him cautiously once more, determined to smooth things over. "Your Highness," she said softly, "would you like something to eat?" The catering service provided some excellent filet mignon and fresh lobster. He glanced up. "I'll take the lobster," he said in a tone that suggested a slight thaw in his mood. She nodded, relieved. "Right away." A few minutes later, she returned with a perfectly plated lobster dish and a side of roasted vegetables. She placed the plate gently on his tray table, offering a polite smile. "If there's anything else you need, please." Suddenly, the plane hit a pocket of turbulence. The cabin shook, and Kate lost her balance for a split second. The glass of ice water she was about to set down slipped from her grasp. She tried to catch it, but her arm jolted forward at the worst possible angle. In a horrifying moment of slow motion, the entire cup of water flew straight toward Prince Thomas and drenched the front of his designer shirt. Water trickled down, soaking his pants and the seat beneath him. He jumped up, face flushed with both surprise and anger. "What in the world?" Kate stood there, mortified. "Your Highness, I'm so sorry. We hit turbulence and I couldn't—" Prince Thomas's eyes flashed with fury. He pulled off his now soaked jacket and threw it onto the empty seat next to him. "I cannot believe this," he fumed. "You've been after me from the start, haven't you?" The other passengers, including the security guards, all turned to witness the chaotic scene. Kate wished she could disappear. "It was an accident, I promise," she stammered, reaching for napkins. She tried to blot the water off him, but he shoved her hand away. "Don't touch me," he roared. "I've never been so humiliated in my life." Kate stepped back, heart pounding. Was this the end of her career? Spilling water on the owner of the jet, a foreign prince, was the kind of mistake that could ruin everything. She swallowed her pride and tried again, quietly. "Your Highness, it was truly an accident. Let me help you dry off." He glared at her, and for a moment, she thought he was going to explode in rage. His jaw tightened. Then, just as quickly, he seemed to catch himself. He sank back into his damp seat with a heavy sigh. "Just bring me some towels," he said, sounding defeated rather than furious. Kate breathed a momentary sigh of relief and hurried off to fetch towels. When she returned, he took them wordlessly and dabbed at his shirt. She noticed that his hands were shaking slightly, which made her wonder if perhaps his anger was hiding an entirely different set of emotions. The plane's captain made an announcement apologizing for the turbulence, assuring everyone they were now in clearer skies. Kate braced herself for the worst, but Prince Thomas remained silent. He stared out the window, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke. "I'm not going to fire you." Kate nearly dropped the remaining towels in surprise. "Sir?" He turned to face her. "I could have you dismissed the moment we land, but I won't." He paused, as if gathering his thoughts. You're the first person in a long time who hasn't cowered or fawned over me just because of my title. I don't like the way you bossed me around, but I appreciate that you treat me like a person and not just a prince. Kate was at a loss for words. She could barely believe her ears. I don't know what to say. He shrugged, tossing the wet towels aside. Don't say anything. Just make sure the rest of this flight goes smoothly. She nodded. Yes, Your Highness. Thank you. As she walked away, her mind was spinning. The prince had gone from enraged to almost understanding in a matter of seconds, and he wasn't going to fire her. She felt a surge of gratitude, and something else she couldn't quite define. By the time the plane landed in Los Angeles, the drama of the mid-flight incident seemed to have settled into a tense but manageable calm. Kate disembarked, certain that once she handed over the plane to the ground crew and said her goodbyes, she would never see Prince Thomas again. After all, she was just one flight attendant among many. However, as she exited the aircraft, one of the prince's security guards approached her. Ms. Henderson, he said politely, Prince Thomas would like a word with you in the terminal lounge. Kate felt a flutter of nerves. Had he changed his mind about not firing her? Was he going to issue some formal complaint or demand compensation for the ruined suit? She steeled herself and followed the guard into a private waiting area. There, standing by a window overlooking the runway, was Prince Thomas. He had changed into a fresh shirt. No trace of the water incident except for the memory. He turned when he heard her footsteps and managed a faint smile. Thank you for coming, he said, in a tone far gentler than anything she'd heard from him before. She stood at a respectful distance. Of course, Your Highness. Is everything all right? He nodded slowly. I wanted to talk to you without the rest of my staff hovering. Look, I realize I behaved poorly. I was drunk, upset, and I said some harsh things to you. I don't want you to think I'm some monster. Kate blinked in surprise. She wasn't expecting an apology. I appreciate that, sir. It was a tense situation. But I understand. These things happen. His lips twitched into what might have been an attempt at a real smile. I've spent so much time with people who treat me like I'm above them. I suppose I got used to it. You broke that pattern in a jarring way, but maybe I needed it. Feeling somewhat uneasy, Kate shifted her stance. Well, it's my job to ensure passenger safety and comfort, regardless of title, but I'm glad we've cleared the air. He nodded. I want to repay your honesty somehow. Perhaps I could invite you to dinner. You must get hungry after a long flight like that. Kate froze. An invitation to dinner from a prince was definitely not in her usual repertoire. She also knew that fraternizing with passengers in that manner could be dangerous territory, not to mention her personal life. She cleared her throat. I'm flattered, Your Highness, but I'm married. My husband is waiting for me back home in New York. Prince Thomas's eyes flicked to her left hand, where she wore a simple wedding band. It was easy to miss, especially on a busy flight. I see, he said, voice subdued. May I ask how long you've been married? 5 years, she replied, a small smile tugging at her lips as she thought of James. He's a teacher. We have a modest but happy life. Thomas nodded thoughtfully. A teacher, huh? That's admirable. He seemed to ponder something for a moment. Well, maybe you can still let me do something nice for you. A gift, perhaps? Kate held up a hand. Your Highness, that's very kind. But really, there's no need. I was just doing my job, and I don't accept gifts from passengers. It's a personal and professional boundary. He let out a soft laugh, though there was a hint of disappointment behind his eyes. I forgot that Americans tend to be more by the book about these things. She gave an apologetic shrug. We try to be, she said, though she recognized that refusing a gift from a prince was not an everyday scenario for most Americans. I appreciate the sentiment, though. For a moment, they stood in silence. Then he spoke again. So, this is goodbye? I believe so, she said. I have another flight scheduled in a few days. I'm sure you'll be busy here in Los Angeles. He nodded, forcing another polite smile. Take care of yourself, Kate Henderson, and thank you again for everything. She offered a respectful nod. Safe travels, Your Highness. The guard escorted her out, and she left the terminal with a mixture of relief and something akin to regret. Despite the chaotic introduction, there had been a certain spark in the air, a clash of two strong wills that left her feeling unexpectedly invigorated. But that spark was overshadowed by her deep love for her husband and her unwavering commitment to her principles. Back at her hotel, she tried to put the entire incident behind her. She called James to let him know she had landed safely. She didn't mention the prince or the dinner invitation, figuring it was simpler to avoid stirring up confusion or jealousy. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the last she'd hear of Prince Thomas. A week later, Kate was working another private flight, this time heading from Miami to New York. She walked onto the plane for her pre-flight inspection and nearly dropped her clipboard when she saw Prince Thomas already seated in one of the chairs, reading a magazine. He looked up at her and smirked. Fancy meeting you again, Miss Henderson, he said, setting the magazine aside. She tried to keep her composure, though her heart raced. Your Highness, I wasn't informed you'd be on this flight. He shrugged casually. I requested it last minute. I have some business in New York, and I specifically asked for you to be the flight attendant. Call it curiosity or a desire to see a friendly face. Her mind whirled with questions. Did he pull strings just to be here with her again? She forced a polite smile. I see. Well, I'll do my best to ensure you have a comfortable flight. He nodded, his gaze lingering on her. I have no doubt you will. The flight took off without incident. Prince Thomas was sober this time, and if anything, he seemed more relaxed than before. He occasionally glanced at Kate, but he kept to himself until about halfway through the trip. Then he rang the call button and waited for her to approach. May I get you something, Your Highness? She asked in her usual professional tone. I was wondering, he said slowly, if you might consider having dinner with me in New York. I have reservations at one of the city's best restaurants. It's just dinner, nothing more. Kate's pulse quickened. She remembered how she'd turned him down before. Did she need to do it again? How many times would he ask? Your Highness, I'm still a married woman. He raised a hand. I know. I'm not asking for a romantic escapade. I'd just like to talk to you more. You fascinate me, Kate Henderson. You have this integrity and warmth about you that's hard to find in my world. She felt a tug of sympathy. Perhaps he really was just lonely, surrounded by people who only saw him for his title. But she shook her head gently. I appreciate that, but I don't want to give you the wrong impression. He exhaled, a trace of disappointment crossing his features. All right, I understand. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and handed her a small envelope. Please, open it when you have a chance. Kate hesitated before taking the envelope. What is this? He smiled cryptically. Consider it an apology and a token of appreciation. A short while later, in the privacy of the galley, Kate carefully opened the envelope Inside was a handwritten note and two folded pieces of paper. The note said, "Thank you for reminding me that respect must be earned, not bought. I hope these bring you some joy, Thomas." She unfolded the papers and saw that they were tickets to a Broadway show that was nearly impossible to get into, plus backstage passes. She breathed out, astonished. Her husband loved the theater, and these tickets must have cost a fortune or required special connections. Now she had a dilemma. Accepting an expensive gift from a passenger was against her professional code. However, these weren't for her alone. They were for her husband as well. And the gesture was not something she could easily dismiss. She carefully refolded the tickets and placed them back in the envelope, unsure what to do. After landing in New York, Prince Thomas gathered his belongings and prepared to disembark. Kate found him standing by the exit, waiting for her. "So," he asked, "did you see what was inside the envelope?" She nodded. "I did. It's an incredibly thoughtful gesture, Your Highness, but I'm not sure I can accept." He gave her a half smile. "They're just tickets, Kate. It's not a priceless artifact. Take your husband to the show. Enjoy yourselves. No strings attached, I promise." She studied his eyes, looking for any sign of manipulation. Instead, she saw sincerity. Finally, she relented. "All right, thank you. It's very generous of you. James will be thrilled." For a moment, Prince Thomas looked genuinely happy. "I'm glad to hear it." He paused, glancing at her wedding band again. "I respect your marriage. I really do. But I also want you to know that if circumstances were different—" She felt her cheeks flush. "I'm sorry, Your Highness, but they aren't different." He nodded in resignation. Understood. They parted ways once more, and Kate headed home to a delighted James, who nearly jumped out of his skin when she showed him the Broadway tickets. She explained that a wealthy passenger she'd assisted wanted to thank her, but left out many details to keep things simple. That night, as she lay in bed, she couldn't help thinking about the prince's lingering glance and the unspoken words in his eyes. A few weeks later, Kate and James went to the show. The seats were front row, and they did indeed get backstage passes. They met the cast and had an unforgettable evening. James couldn't stop talking about how incredible the experience was. Kate's thoughts were more conflicted, though. She felt grateful to Prince Thomas for sharing this luxury, but also uneasy that he kept seeking her out. Late that night, after they returned home, her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "I hope you both had a wonderful time at the show. T." Kate stared at the message. A small part of her was touched by his consideration, but another part felt a pang of guilt. She typed a brief reply. "Yes, thank you again. It was amazing. Take care." She never received a response. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. Kate carried on with her life, working flights, loving her husband, enjoying the normalcy of her everyday routine. She heard rumors that Prince Thomas was traveling all over the globe, London, Tokyo, Dubai, fulfilling his royal duties and business obligations. Eventually, she nearly convinced herself that her time with him was just a strange, fleeting experience, the kind of story she might one day tell a close friend over coffee. But then, one spring morning, she received a letter, an actual handwritten letter on elegant stationery with a foreign crest embossed at the top. It was from Prince Thomas. In carefully penned script, he wrote that meeting her had changed his perspective on many things. He confessed that he used to believe he could buy loyalty, friendship, or even affection, but her refusal to be swayed by his wealth had shown him that real connection goes beyond money. He wished her happiness in her marriage, and thanked her once again for treating him like a human being rather than a royal figurehead. At the end of the letter, he wrote, "One day, I hope to meet someone who sees me as you did, someone who cares more about the person than the title or the fortune. I'll always be grateful to you for opening my eyes. Sincerely, Thomas." Kate felt tears prick the corners of her eyes as she finished reading. She folded the letter gently, touched by his vulnerability. She showed it to James, who read it in silence, and then offered her a reassuring smile. "He sounds like he's finally learning what it means to be a good man," James said. "I'm glad you helped him see that." In the end, Prince Thomas never tried to buy Kate's love again. She remained loyal to her husband, and her encounter with the prince became a profound lesson in the value of genuine